Hey guys, so welcome back to the KCD Millwork channel. We just finished taking it out of our form, our Walnut River table, and we have no CNC machine here, so we had to make up our own. And right now we're going to level out the planing and level up the top, level out the bottom, so let's get started. Okay, so if you guys can see, I'm just taking 1/2-inch swipes of my plunge router bit. I gotta do that, I don't know, for probably about an hour or more, depending, maybe 2 or 3 hours. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pause the video and I'll continue it when I've gotten a little bit more down. I got quite a few more ways to go. Yeah, so this is going to be awesome, guys. I'm going to pause the video. We'll catch you in a bit. Hey, guys. Okay, so I'm just about halfway there on the first of 6 layered cuts on the top. Pretty soon I'm going to turn the camera around because there's a piece of epoxy on the top where I filled a knot hole. And I want you guys to see how it's actually going to turn out. Because I siliconed around the knot and filled the knot itself, the cavity. So I'd like you to actually see as I router over top of that so you know what it's going to look like when you use your flush trim router. So give me about another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I'll be back. Catch you in a bit. Hey guys, okay, so I made it to the knot where I filled the epoxy and silicone around it so it wouldn't travel out of the silicone area too much, or the knot hole area. So I'm pretty sure you can see that little knot hole there. I filled the sides, I filled the top, so I moved the camera around. But what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to just keep going, and I'm going to turn the camera down so you can actually see what's going on, and then I'll turn it around so you can see what actually is left after I've routed all of this off. Yeah, so here we go. All right, you guys ready? Let's do this. All right, cool. So I'm just going to turn the camera around here so you can actually see what the knot actually looked like when we're done routering it. So you can see here we put that silicone around so it wouldn't go all over the place as much as possible anyway. But this was about a 1/4 inch above. You can see how the silicone helped with that. And we filled it up pretty good. We got a little bit more over here to do, but that we can do at the finishing stage. But as you can see, you know, we had a lot of knot hole here we had to fill up. But don't worry about the little tiny router marks. Don't worry about all the tiny little lines that you're leaving in here. We got another 3 or 4 more passes over this whole countertop to do to make sure this whole countertop is flush. And then we got sanding to do. So again, guys, I got a little bit more here to do. I'm going to keep coming, keep recording here every 10 or so minutes so you guys can see the progress. I don't want to have the video record for 5 hours. But this way you'll get a good idea of how many passes we got to do and what's all entailed in leveling off this countertop. All right, so I'll put you over here in the corner. One more time. I'll raise this up a little bit. There we go. Cool, guys. I'm going to get back routering. We'll catch you in a bit. Hey, guys. Okay, so I just finished off the first pass. And I don't know what time it is now. I don't have a clock on me. My phone has the watch time on. But yeah, so that's the first pass. Every pass you don't want to make, you don't want to do any more than 1/8 of an inch to maybe 3/16 of an inch pass. Depends on if you're feeling comfortable with your routering or not. I like to take the time making sure that my router's not going to chip any of the wood out. So I take about 1/8 of an inch to maybe just a hair more, 3/16. Any more than that, you get lots of chattering that you're going to have to sand later. I know it's not going to matter much right now because I have about 4 or 5 passes I have to do on this top layer. But yeah, again, that was the first pass. I'm going to set my router a little bit deeper and go for my second pass. And I'll keep you guys informed. Hey guys, okay, so when I started back here, the router only goes the one way. So when I set for my second depth, you can see here this little groove. It started chattering, so I had to go all the way back down to the other end. I've done about 4 inches so far, and that's only taken me 15 minutes. So that just goes to show you how long it's going to take me to finish the rest of this table. So yeah, about 4 inches, 15 to 20 minutes maybe. But I got it set for about maybe a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more. I'm just going a little bit slower because I don't want it chattering too much. I'm going to have to do another thin 1/16 of an inch layer, but that'll be fine. I can probably even sand it out. I'll join you guys in when I'm halfway through the table. Hey guys, so I'm sure you can see my DeWalt clamps here on the end of my my makeup CNC jig. What's happening is when I router, because I'm taking a little bit much more off of the chunks, what's happening is the jig is starting to slide over as I'm halfway through my board. So I have to sit here and clamp it every 1/2 inch. So that's why it might take me a little bit longer, but at the end of the day, it's gonna still look like it's supposed to, a beautiful epoxy river table. Catch you in a bit. Hey guys, welcome back to KCD Millwork channel. So yesterday we were routering and our video was not doing it properly. It was stopping and pausing and stopping and pausing. So I just decided we're going to make about 4 or 5 different videos instead, and I'll do the best I can at pausing the video in between what we're doing, and hopefully you guys can see how this table is progressing along. So yesterday we started our routering for leveling, and we did a couple passes, and we were showing you in the previous video. If you haven't already seen our videos, subscribe to our channel, subscribe to the notifications. That way you'll be notified when a new video pops up. And this one's the Walnut River table. So anyway, when we were routering yesterday, it took a little bit longer than anticipated. It took 7 hours of routering, and as you can see, we got all of our dust that we did that came off of our router, we actually put back onto our table because I didn't want the heat in my or the ambient air in my shop to suck the moisture out of my table. So when I routed, I put all the chips back onto the table. That way I can kind of keep it as the moisture in the table as best as possible. Because when you're taking stuff off of wood, the moisture content always changes. And when you're routering, you know, spending 7 hours routering and flattening out a level, you don't want to have to do it again. So if I would have left the chips off, I'm thinking that it may have bowed a little bit, and I didn't want that. So I was just taking a little bit of extra precaution is all. So let me just take another little sip of coffee. I'll take all this sand or all this dust off, and we'll get to showing you what I actually did yesterday and why it took me 7 hours to router. Yeah, so fun times. Let's get to it today, guys. So as I mentioned in my video yesterday, or the previous video to this, we had to make up our own jig, our own little CNC. Here it is. All it is just a track for my router to go down, back and forth, and then I just take and I clamp these ends to my straightening boards. That way it keeps the same level plane and it's not going to move if I'm pushing my router a little bit too hard. All right, I think we should broom this off, eh? It's a lot of dust, 7 hours worth. Believe me, for standing and reaching over a table for 7 hours, you get a little bit tired. Normally I go to the gym every day, but I didn't yesterday. So we're going to keep all this dust too, because we have to do the other side of the table yet. So we'll do a little partial video on that side too, but all this dust, we're just going to sweep it off to the side, and then we'll put it back on the other side when we're done routering, along with all the other dust. Again, we don't want any of that moisture getting sucked out of the table, as much as possible anyway. We'll just get it as much as we can off to the ground, and we can show you what the table actually looks like. Telling you though, when I was a little kid, my dad always worked in the wood shop, and I always loved the smell of any type of wood he was cutting. And it was always in the basement when we were growing up, because he didn't have enough, you know, at the time, you know, we were raised in a lower economy, I guess, but at the time he didn't have very much money for a shop. So he did what he could and made do in the basement, which that's how I've learned, is to make do with what you got. It's a good way to be raised. So props to my father, or my birth father, not my birth father, but the father who raised me anyway. If you guys have any comments, or if you guys need to know anything, just comment below, and I'll do the best I can at answering your questions. Anything wood, or if you see anything that you can suggest on these tables too, throw it in the comments below, suggest it. Maybe, you know, if you have a project you think you might want us to do, or maybe try out for another video, again, post it in the comments and we'll do what we can for you. Cool. All right, I'm going to take you off the tripod here. So check that out. Look at all that dust. That's 1.5 feet thick. So, if you can see that, this was higher yesterday. There was lips everywhere. There was a lip here and a lip on this side. You can see all my little half-inch marks. Half inch, half inch, half inch, half inch. So I'd router the half an inch, and then I'd move it over another half an inch and router it again. So that's what it's looking like now. There's my bow ties. That's so my board doesn't split, because you can see this split here down the crack of my wood. But those bow ties make it come together quite nicely. So I routed off a good half an inch of this yesterday. So the table's 76 inches long, and if you take a half an inch, and times that by 2, that's about 152 swipes. And I went over the table 3 times, so that's 150 times 3 is 459 times I passed the router over this table. So that's why it took me 7 hours. So again, sorry I didn't post the video. But that's why I'm posting this video, so you guys can see what it actually looks like when it's routed off flush. So when we first initially poured our epoxy on, we didn't see these tiny little holes. This hole here will be finished or filled in at our finishing stage. This is one of the ones that we saw from the top. So that was filled. That's why you see it there. Along with this one. This one here looks pretty good. A little bit of filling that we got to do here. Not much, but a little bit. And same with this one. So we got to fill that a little bit when we get to our finishing stage. So keep that in mind when you're taking off your layers. Along with this crack here, we're going to fill that up at our finishing stage and then just kind of sand it off flush. We didn't want to do that at the stage where we filled everything else. So that's what it looks like right now, guys. So 7 hours of routering got me this. So you can only imagine what it's going to take on the other side. That's why, again, as I mentioned in my previous videos, that's why these tables cost a lot of money, because there's a lot of time involved in making these tables. You're finding your wood, you're acclimating your wood into your shop that you're bringing it in. You have the epoxy that you're, depending on the thickness of your pour, you might have to pour once or twice or 3 times, and then you got to let that cure and sand in between coats. If you that's if you're not lucky enough to actually add on to the epoxy that you've already put in, which you can do that as well. I used Ecopoxy this time from Windsor Plywood. Great epoxy so far. I haven't had a problem with it. So that's it for this video right now, guys. I'm going to flip this table over and we're going to start doing the other side, and hopefully we don't have to do another 450 passes. Here's hoping. So again, if you haven't subscribed to our video channel yet, go ahead and click the subscribe button and click the notification button and comment on all the videos. If you have any questions, just comment below and we'll answer them the best we can, guys. So thanks for joining the KCD Millwork channel, and we'll see you again next time. Hey guys, welcome back to KCD Millwork channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so by hitting that button, and also for the notifications. Okay, so we already spent 6 hours, as we discussed in the previous video, 6 or 7 hours routering the top side. We had to clean our form off, redo it, put our brand new CNC, not brand new CNC, our homemade CNC on the second side. So we just finished this side. Spent about 4.5, 5 hours routering this flush and all level as well. You can see it, our holes here where the knots were. That's where I had some tuck tape so no epoxy could go in there. And now I have about 7 hours of sanding to do. I got to do the belt sander to get all my router marks out of here. 50, 80, 120 grit. And then I'm going to hit the orbital sander all the way from 120, 220, 320, and 400. And then hopefully up to the polishing stage. And then I got to do that per side. So I'm going to take you off the stand here and I'm going to show you a little bit of what kind of marks we have on the table so you can see. So I don't know if you can see all those tiny little lines, the 1/2 inch lines and the 3/4 inch lines. That's when we did the routering per pass. So that's what we want to take off with our sander. Looking pretty flush so far. Man, that river looks good, doesn't it? It's called a bow tie. That's to hold the crack together. Got a little bit of epoxy in there, but not too much. So here's the one knot hole. We have to clean all the bark out of there. So the bark's all out. It's just dust in there right now. You can see our little router marks. These we're just going to fill. Little tiny hole. We went through a little too fast with our router. So you can see that little hole there. So that'll be filled with epoxy at our finish stage. There's another one of those beautiful knots. That's going to show up real nice when we're done our epoxy. All right, yeah, so that's basically what we got. We leveled it off. We're about 2 inches thick right now. And hopefully by the time we're done sanding, we're going to have a beautiful epoxy table. Sound good to you guys? Sweet. All right, well, I'm going to get sanding. Stay tuned. I'll post another video later. Okay, so I paused the video a little bit and took my sander to this side, and just so you can see what I have to do, it's a belt sander with a 50 grit on it because I had to really aggressively take some stuff off. You don't have to worry about the sanding marks so much right now because by the time you get up to 80 and 100 and 120 and 220, you're into the orbital by then and you're going with the grain. Just make sure you go with the grain. Here, with the belt sander, I'm going back and forth, crisscross angles, just in case there's any humps in the wood. That's going to even it all out. You never want to go straight or sit there on one hump because either you're going to get a divot or that hump's going to stay. It'll just continue staying. So what a good suggestion is, always go corner to corner one way, switch it, corner to corner the other way, switch it, corner to corner, and switch. Side to side, side to side, always overlapping, fanning it out. This way you don't end up with a tiny bump. That tiny bump will then fan out and be even across the whole field. But I'm going to take it off right now. And I'm going to show you guys the one side compared to the other side, just so you can see what's going on. See, right here, this is the side that I sanded. Nice and flush, flat. Yeah, there's all the scuff marks, but again, we're not going to worry about that because we're sanding all the way up to 400. So by the time I get up to 400, all these scuff marks are going to be gone. But if you can see, there's no more. You see this side, all those 1/2 inch router marks compared to this side are all gone. So it took me about an hour to do that. You want to make sure to take the time. This is the time where you need to really go slow and make sure everything's going to be good, because before finishing you can't sand. You can't sand after you're done finishing. So you want to make sure that this is going to be done and sanded properly. So take the time and sand it properly all the way up to 400 grit before you even start to think about finishing. All right, so I'm going to continue on and I'll pause the video and I'll show you guys the difference between all the grits later on. Talk to you soon. I'm just going to show you what I mean by crossing on an angle, going 45 one way, 45 the other way, back and forth, back and forth. So you get a nice level. What you're doing is you're taking that tiny little bump or tiny little router mark and you're spreading it out. You're fanning it out so where you can't feel it by hand. Okay? So I'm just going to show you real quick. This is my last little bit to sand, then we're going to be on the orbital. So 45 one way, 45 the other way. Then we go grain of the wood. Just like that. 45 one way, 45 the other way. Finish off with the grain of the wood. So we're done with the belt sander for now. Now I have about 10 different layers of orbital sandpaper to go through, starting with 60 grit, 80 grit, 100, 120, 220, 320, just a whole whack load. So you know what the orbital sander is, the belt sander. Pretty aggressive. People like to use that because it's more aggressive than the orbital. The orbital sander, what it does is it oscillates, circles, and it goes back and forth. So it doesn't stay in one spot. So I'll show you real quick here. You can see all those little tiny grooves. This is all left over from the belt sander. Even in the wood. Not much. Not much. I don't know if you can see that or not. Here you can. So what's going to happen is all those are going to turn into, instead of having them in lines, it's going to be orbital, and it's going to take it all the way. And gradually, as you start with an 80 grit and work your way all up to a 400, you shouldn't see any orbital marks whatsoever. So let's start off with the 80 here. So with the orbital, you want to always make sure with any sander or any sanding, try to go with the grain as much as you physically can. Because if there is any marks, the grain should hide it. Never let your sander stop on your material. Okay, so when I'm on the epoxy, what I'm doing here, my goal on the epoxy is the lines that I just previously showed you. With the orbital, or that were made from the belt sander, I'm taking the orbital and making sure the lines are gone. And if you continuously do that with every grit of sandpaper, eventually you're going to be able to see no swirl marks or no lines whatsoever when you get up to the 400 degree or 400 grit. So that's essentially it. That's all you want to do. I noticed that, you know, I'm going to sand it all with this 80 grit right now, and then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to silicone and take these knots off, clean them up, and fill them with epoxy now. Before I start finishing my finish sanding, because I don't want to have to sand the epoxy again and finish the whole table with 400 grit. So I'm just going to do it with the 80 and then mix some more epoxy and put it into my knots. So that'll be in our next video. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit the notification button below, and you will be notified of when we are going to mix this. We'll mix 2 small batches, and then you'll see a video on how we're going to mix it. Alrighty, so thanks again for joining the KCD Millwork channel. Hope you enjoyed the movie, or the introduction here. Again, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification button, or you can see us online at www.keystoneconstructioninc.ca, or we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Alright? Stay safe.